One of the most promising products in the long search for a safe, low-calorie sweetener is NutraSweet. Used in hundreds of different foods and beverages, NutraSweet, most people agree, is the best tasting of all the sugar replacements. But maintaining a consistent taste is often a problem, since NutraSweet can lose sweetness after a few months of storage. So when working with a new cola, for example, NutraSweet researchers must make sure the prototype will have a shelf life of at least 4 months. Will this prototype meet this standard? To find out, NutraSweet's sensory evaluation team is preparing for a taste test. The beverage will be evaluated once immediately after it's been made, and then again after 1 month. The difference will be analyzed with a paired t-test, as NutraSweet statistician Tom Carr explains.
A paired t-test is a statistical test of hypothesis where you have a single sample that's measured, for instance, at 2 points in time, and it reduces to a single sample t-test when you consider the differences between the first and the second time the object is measured.
Taste your standards first and then rate your sample. Okay.
This group of 10 panelists has undergone 4 months of daily training. They are about to decide the fate of the prototype cola. When they are ready for their samples, they turn on the red light. Researchers in the kitchen are waiting for the signal. One of the most difficult tasks the panelists learn is how to quantify the enormously subjective attributes they'll be rating.
We use these panelists as analytical instruments, and like any analytical instrument, you need to calibrate them. So they're given references of maybe 5 units on the 15-unit scale, 10 and 15. And through a series of examples, they get to know what intensity is associated with all the points on the scale.
After they taste the standards, the panelists are ready to proceed. They taste the cola and rate it in a series of attributes: brown spice, vanilla, sweetness, and many others.
Hi there. Go ahead and sign in number 5. We have 1 sample.
1 month later, the panelists return. During this time, the cola has been stored in extremely warm conditions to simulate 4 months of storage under normal conditions. The taste test is identical to the earlier one. The same panelists, the same procedures, the same standards. All sources of variability besides the change in the cola have been eliminated. The null hypothesis for this t-test is that the sweetness after 1 month is equal to the initial sweetness. The alternative hypothesis is that the sweetness at 1 month is less than the initial sweetness. It is a one-tailed test, since Tom Carr is only interested in whether the cola loses sweetness over time. To test the hypotheses, Tom must first calculate the difference between the before and after sweetness ratings for each panelist, and then find the mean of these differences.
By performing the necessary computations using the means and standard deviations that we observed, we can compute the t-statistic value and then compute the probability of obtaining that value in an experiment by looking up in a table or by having a computer calculate the probability for us.
Tom found that the sweetness fell off 1 unit, a result that had a less than 5% probability of occurring by chance. This provides strong evidence against the null hypothesis and led Tom to conclude that the product had in fact changed over time.
Going back, we found that the acidity level wasn't quite right, and that would account for the more rapid decline in the sweetness that we saw. And I would imagine...
At a strategy session, the results of the taste test are discussed and a course of action is charted.
Going into an unacceptable level, even if you boost the sweetness a little bit initially.
Fine.
Researchers will change the formulation and then test the cola again to see if it retains its sweetness longer. But even then, the process is not over. Through rigorous experiment design and data analysis, any attribute of the product can be isolated, tested, and continually improved.
R&D people love to look at millions of things, and we will never stop researching a product. Using statistics, we set the boundaries very quickly, and we understand that outside this parameter we have unacceptability, outside this parameter we have unacceptability, and here's where we're going to live.
Let's see how Tom Carr arrived at his conclusion that the cola lost sweetness after 1 month of accelerated storage. Here are 10 testers' scores for the taste of the fresh soda, and here are the scores from the same testers for the month-old soda. To do a significance test, we first need to find the differences between the pairs of scores. Now we have a single set of observations that we can analyze using the single sample procedures we've just learned. To describe the differences, we first compute their mean and sample standard deviation. We find that the mean taste score dropped by 1 with a standard deviation of 1.13. We want to test the null hypothesis that the sweetness of the sodas doesn't deteriorate systematically. So the null hypothesis is no change. Mu, the mean change in the soda, is 0. The alternative hypothesis is that the sweetness decreases. Mu, the difference in the before and after scores, is greater than 0. The t-test statistic is the same one we've used before. The numbers we plug in are x bar, which is 1, mu, which we assume is 0 by our null hypothesis, s, which is 1.13, and n, which is 10. Doing the arithmetic gives us t equals 2.8. Now we need to find the p-value that corresponds to this figure. To do that, we use our table of critical values for t. Since our sample size was 10, we look in the row for 9 degrees of freedom. The table shows that 2.8 lies between the 0.02 and 0.01 critical values. That's between 2% and 1%. This means we could expect a drop in sweetness as large as we found, fewer than 2 times in 100, if nothing was happening here but normal variation. That's strong evidence that our null hypothesis is false. The sweetness of the test soda does deteriorate significantly over time.